You know the feeling. You're staring at your screen, a looming task hanging over your head. Internally, you are screaming at yourself to start, but your body remains completely rigid and frozen. Society usually applies a single label to this state: laziness. It's framed as a weakness of character, a moral failing that can only be solved by trying harder. But the internal experience tells a different story. A truly lazy person feels comfortable and indifferent about the work. When you are stuck in this frozen state, you care deeply, feeling the weight of intense stress and crushing guilt. This inability to act represents a distinct, observable neurobiological block. It is a physiological state that has been misinterpreted as a personality trait. To reclaim your productivity, you have to stop judging a symptom as a flaw and start diagnosing the biological system. The process of doing work starts right behind your forehead, in the prefrontal cortex. This is your brain's executive management system, the central hub that organizes information and translates your intentions into physical actions. In a state of executive dysfunction, the mental ignition switch stalls out. You possess the physical energy, but the neurological signal cannot travel from the planning center to the motor centers. Because of this misfire, mundane tasks require immense cognitive bandwidth. Answering a single email or paying a bill demands massive, deliberate effort from this brain, compared to the automatic processing of a neurotypical one. This invisible wall is the result of a structural misfire in the brain's executive system, rather than a lack of willpower. Sometimes, the wall is built by our own biology's attempt to protect us. This involves a constant anatomical tug-of-war between the rational prefrontal cortex and the emotional limbic system. For a perfectionist, the risk of making a mistake feels like a total loss of self-worth. Because the brain processes this potential social failure as a high-stakes crisis, the amygdala flags a mundane work assignment as a mortal threat, triggering a full-scale emotional hijack. To protect the body from this perceived danger, the nervous system sends out suppressive signals that act as a brake pedal. This is the physiological freeze response, a reflex designed to keep a body perfectly still to avoid a predator. In this state, severe procrastination operates as an emotional survival reflex that overrides conscious control of your physiology. At the clinical psychiatric level, this paralysis has a formal medical term: avolition. It is a hallmark symptom of clinical depression. This chart shows the mechanics of reward prediction error. We see dopamine levels spike right when an expected reward is achieved. That chemical surge provides the necessary motivation for the body to physically move toward a goal. But under chronic stress or depression, the brain's reward system changes. When a brain expects negative outcomes, dopamine signaling is depressed, and motivated behavior literally goes extinct. Avolition represents a literal chemical inability to expend energy, making it a medical condition rather than a preference for comfort. Trying to solve a biological block through sheer willpower or societal shame is actively counterproductive. Shaming yourself creates a destructive biological loop. It floods your system with cortisol, a stress hormone that physically damages and shrinks the dendritic connections within the prefrontal cortex required to get unstuck. Progress requires moving from a willpower-based model to a strategy-based one. This involved externalizing the brain's impaired executive functions to reduce the mental load. One such strategy is the Eisenhower matrix. By categorizing tasks strictly by urgency and importance on a physical piece of paper, you bypass internal decision paralysis and free up limited working memory. Utilizing these external systems and breaking work into small micro-goals allows you to bypass the massive activation energy your brain usually requires to start. Over time, tools like cognitive behavioral therapy and mindful awareness can physically rewire these pathways, lowering your limbic system's reactivity to stress. Practicing self-compassion serves as a vital neurological brake. It actively halts cortisol production, creating the chemical opening needed for the prefrontal cortex to reboot. Hitting the invisible wall is a signal that your brain's circuitry is temporarily jammed, not that your character is flawed. When you abandon the myth of laziness and embrace the neurobiology of the brain, you reclaim your agency. You finally gain the tools to get moving again.